Jeremy, can you tell us about your educational background and qualification?
Yes, there's some things that are very, very important. To start with, is that I'm not a scientist. I'm a very practical person, but I did do a degree in forestry, so I'm a forester by training. But literally after the first couple of years, I worked for our forest service in Britain. I worked for them for 2 years, and I realised, yeah, this isn't for me. I love forests, but actually I like trees in town. So I moved to arboriculture and started practically climbing and doing more sort of tree surgery and tree management in town. So that was my background, and then really I've just professionally, I didn't move on from an academic point of view. I just practically progressed through my career. So I was a climber to start with for 15 years, from 1980 to 1995, and then in 1995 I stopped climbing because I was too old, worn out, and then I started doing consultancy. So I worked just as a consultant by myself to start with, and then consultancy was just sort of taking off in Britain in the mid 1990s, and so I took on one extra person, then another one, and in the end we've now got 80 people that work for us. So we have 5 consultants, so like me, we're at the front end, we go out and earn the money, but equally as important is the sort of 12 or 13 people that we have behind us supporting our business operation. We have drawing technicians, so they prepare our plans. Plans are a very important part of our business, and we have an accounts manager who pays all the wages, that's very important. And we have office managers and then support, administrative support for our consultants. So it started off as me just by myself, but now it's like a huge machine that's difficult to control sometimes.
In 2010, you became American Society of Consulting Arborists registered consulting arborist. What prompted you to pursue this certification, and how has it impacted your work?
The Americans have a great system. The American Society of Consulting Arborists is just for consultants, so they just deal with consultancy. In America, it's primarily tree valuation, so they put a value on trees where a tree's been cut down or damaged in an accident, and then that goes to court, and then that's how compensation is paid. And they have a very progressive approach to consultancy, in the sense that report writing is a very important part of the process, and it is. As a consultant, we have to convey the explanation, just like telling a story from the start to the finish. This is what happened, this is what we saw, this is what we think may be going on, and here's what we think the answer is. And as a consultant, that's what you have to do. And report writing is an extremely, some people are naturally good at it, but it's an extremely difficult discipline to master, and I still haven't mastered it after 20 or 30 years. But ASCA has a process where you go to an academy for 3.5 days, and they teach you all of the principles, or lecture you on the principles. Then you have to take away a case study, and they give a different one to different people. And so it sets out, here's a tree, here's what happened to it, tell us what needs to be done to it. So it's the same sort of thing. And you have to prepare a report based on what you've learnt in their workshop, and then send it back to them. And it's checked by an independent auditor, and it's scored. And if you get, I can't remember what the pass mark is, but it's like 70% or 80%, it's quite high. And you have to pass that, and then you get sent 2 more scenarios, and you have to do 2 more reports, and then finally you have to then submit one of your own reports, which is for them to view. And they have a really good book, or a guidance book, manual, which tells you how to do it to supplement what you learnt on the course. And if you pass that, you become a registered consulting arborist, which is an RCA, and you get given a number. My number was 498, and they are now on 700 or 800 now. So there's quite a few people have passed since I did it. And I went to the academy in 2007, and in 2010 I finally passed it. So it just takes a long time, and I was busy, and you have to really be motivated to do it. But it's a great discipline. It doesn't do me any good whatsoever in my business in Britain because it has no formal recognition, and in America it's highly recognized. It's the top credential. So I was really keen to just try and find out if I was able to do it, and just to be able to expand my knowledge and ability, and it was really valuable from that. And as a result of that, we sent several of our other consultants on courses in subsequent years. So they got a trip to America, and one of them is now still registered, I think, as a consulting arborist. So it's a great thing to do. It doesn't apply perfectly in England or in other parts of Europe, but it's a great process to go through. So something really good to come out of America.
Your list of professional achievements includes being an expert witness, specializing in harm arising from trees failures. How did you get involved in this area of work, and what does it entail?
Well, interesting enough, being an expert witness is, it's not all about academic credentials. It's very easy to think you need to have a PhD, or you need to be a doctor or a professor, and maybe in medicine that may be the case, but in trees it's very important to understand the basics of how trees work. And because I was a tree climber, so I cut down many trees and pruned them, I've got lots of practical experience of how they behave, what problems arise, and that actually is critically important when you're acting as an expert witness. So the courts want to know, why did something happen? What was the cause of the failure? Could it have been avoided? If you check the failure or check the tree before the failure, would you as an expert or an expert have been able to identify the problem and done something about it? Sometimes there's obvious problems, like there's a cavity or an imbalanced limb and a weak union or something like that. Other times there are no obvious indications. The branch failed or the tree failed and it wouldn't have been discoverable, and in which case then nobody's done anything wrong. So being an expert witness, from my point of view, and I do more cases in Britain than anyone else in this particular field, is about having the practical experience and knowledge, and then being able to articulate that in a report, and then talk to a judge about it or in court, and then be cross-examined by some of the greatest minds in the world. These barristers are very clever, and if you can get through that process and then help the court come to the right decision, then that is the essence of being an expert witness. So I'd say that my success as an expert witness is based on my practical experience primarily, and then the ability to talk about problems. And I go all over the world. So I'm in the Czech Republic now, but I've been to lots of different places, and seeing how trees behave in different places is a very important part of the process.
You are the author of over 100 articles and technical papers. What motivates you to contribute to the arboriculture literature?
Yes.
And what topics you find most important?
It currently runs at about 142, I think, and I think risk management is one of the most important areas, I think, that I write on, because it's very easy to get consumed on a particular way of doing things. And in fact, risk management is a very complex process, and there is no right way or wrong way of doing it. There are just lots of different ways, and some have big benefits and others have disbenefits. And I think for me to be able to write about that and try and help ordinary people out there, the arborists, the guys on the ground, the tree inspectors who are looking at trees, to help them understand the bigger picture, because it's very easy as a specialist to be focused on the tree, but actually tree risk management is much more than just the tree. It's about the circumstances, how many people are going along this path, whether if a branch would fail, would it hit anything, or would it hit someone and cause harm? Those are those are issues which need to be expressed. And it's very easy to get locked up and feel safe in a process that is designed by people, academics quite often, and actually it's very useful sometimes to be able to stand back and say, what are we doing when we stand in front of a tree? We're not trying to work out the probability of failure. The probability of failure means nothing to the ordinary person. It's just a figure. It doesn't. How do you relate to it? What we're really trying to do is to stand in front of that tree and say, right, we're coming back in 2 years' time, so we know the inspection frequency. We're coming back in 2 years' time, and in that 2 years, is the tree going to blow over or fall over? The answer is no for this tree. In that time frame, is a branch going to fall off and there's a cavity up there, or there's some dieback in the crown? And we have to make a decision. Do we think in those 2 years between now and the next time you get here, it will fail? And you cannot have the 70% chance of it failing. What on earth does that mean? The issue is, you are the expert. You're advising a client who knows nothing about trees. They need to know what to do. What is helpful for clients is to say, I think that branch is going to fail in the next year or 2 years, and in fact I think we need to do something about it. And so therefore, if it's going to fail, then the next step is it going to hit anything if it fails? So how many people are near it or go past it? And if it was on this path here and the branch was going to fall over away from the path and there's no chance of it reaching the path, then you wouldn't really. So there's very, very little chance of it causing any harm, so maybe we don't do anything about it. If it's going to fall on the path, then if you have a path, the courts in Britain at least are interested in what's reasonably foreseeable, and is that harm to a person reasonably foreseeable? And if people are walking along this path, then the answer is there's a chance that they could get hit. And it depends to some extent how many. If there's hundreds, obviously there's a much greater chance. If there's only a few people, or one a day or one a week, then that's much less. But there still is a point where you have to make a decision, and the decision is the advice we have to give to the clients is prune that branch or stabilize it in some way. And it's up to the client then whether they decide they want to do that or not. What I'm trying to do is to distill the massive complication about how different tree species behave, about how different defects and conditions in trees, how decay, how different types of fungi work, all of that distilled down to a simple decision for the client, for the person who's asked you for the advice. What do I do with this tree? So that's what I like doing.